The radio signal came through at 2 in the morning. Captain Nathan Hayes was asleep in his office when the alarm pulled him awake. His eyes snapped open and he sat up straight, his hand already reaching for the communication headset on his desk. The Pacific Research Station hummed with the sounds of machinery and life support systems. Outside the thick windows, the ocean rolled under a dark sky filled with stars. This station sat alone on a small island, far from any major city. It was home to 47 people who studied Earth's atmosphere, ocean patterns, and the vast universe beyond. Nathan was a tall man with dark hair that was starting to turn gray. He had commanded this station for 5 years. Before that, he had served in the military, protecting his country and its people. Now he protected something bigger. He protected humanity's contact with the wider universe. The signal was not from Earth. That much was clear from the first second. No human transmitter could send a signal like this. It came from deep in space, and it was getting stronger every second. More importantly, it was a distress call. Nathan put on the headset and heard the voice of Dr. Kevin Martinez, the station's chief scientist. Kevin had been monitoring the deep space sensors all night. "Nathan, we are receiving a signal from an unknown vessel. It is definitely not human. The power signature is massive. The ship is damaged. They are sending distress signals across multiple frequencies," Kevin said, his voice tight with excitement and fear. "How far away?" Nathan asked. 2 hours. Maybe less. They are moving fast, but their engines are failing. There is something else. Kevin paused. There is a second signal. It is not coming from the ship. It is coming from something else. Something bigger. Something that is hunting them. Nathan stood and moved to the window. The stars looked the same as always. Nothing seemed different. But his life had just changed. Humanity's life had just changed. "Get everyone to the control center. We need to understand what we are dealing with," Nathan said. 20 minutes later, the control room was full. Dr. Lisa Grant was there, the station's medical officer. She was a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and steady hands. Beside her stood engineer Tom Parker, who kept the station running. Young scientist Rachel Kim was at the communication terminal, trying to decode the alien signal. The image on the main screen showed 2 objects moving through space. One was a massive ship, shaped like a blade or a crescent moon. It was beautiful in a way that made Nathan's chest hurt. The ship was damaged. Sections of its hull were gone, torn away like paper. It was leaving a trail of debris as it moved. Behind it came something else. It did not have a shape. It was more like a cloud made of darkness and moving stars. It did not have a clear form. It simply was, and it consumed everything it touched. Where it moved, the debris behind the fleeing ship simply vanished. "What in God's name is that?" Tom whispered. No one answered. No one knew. The alien ship sent another signal. Rachel worked on her terminal, trying to understand the patterns. Suddenly, words appeared on the screen. Not English words, but the computer had done its best to translate the meaning. "Help us. The swarm comes. We will not survive. Help us." Nathan looked at each face in the room. He saw fear. He saw confusion. He saw the weight of choice settling on their shoulders. "Can we communicate back?" he asked. Rachel nodded and began working. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. After a minute, she said, "I am sending them our location. I told them we see their signal and we understand they need help. Tell them we will try," Nathan said. "Try what exactly?" Tom asked. "We are a research station, not a military base. We have no weapons. We have no way to fight that thing." Nathan looked at the screen again. The fleeing ship was getting closer. In 30 minutes, it would reach Earth's atmosphere. In an hour, it could crash somewhere on this planet. And something was hunting it. something that had already destroyed an entire ship. "We do not fight," Nathan said. "We help. That is what humans do. That is who we are." Lisa looked at him and nodded. She understood. "I will prepare the medical bay. If they crash, they will be injured." "Prepare for anything," Nathan said. "We do not know what they are. We do not know what their biology is like. But we know they are hurt and they are running from death. That is enough." Tom and Rachel exchanged looks. They were afraid, but they were also human. They also knew what it meant to help someone in danger. The next 30 minutes were chaos. The crew worked fast. They cleared space in the medical bay. They set up extra power supplies. They tried to learn more about the aliens from the signals they were receiving. Then came the moment they all knew was coming. The ship came down through the atmosphere like a meteor. Its hull burned with friction and internal fires. It did not have enough power to land gently. It came down hard, crashing into the ocean just beyond the station. The impact sent waves across the water. The station rocked. Alarm sounded. Nathan was already moving. "Get the rescue boats in the water now." The small boats cut through the waves toward the crash site. Nathan was in the first boat, with Lisa and 2 other crew members. As they got closer, they could see the alien ship sinking into the dark ocean. Its hull was cracked. Fire still burned in places where the atmosphere was thick enough. The water around the ship was moving. Not from waves. Something was in the water. Something alive. Then a figure emerged. Then another. The creatures were tall, with skin that looked like metal or scales. They had too many limbs. Their eyes were bright and intelligent. They were alive, and they were afraid. Nathan stood in the boat and raised his hands to show he had no weapons. Around him, his crew did the same. "We are here to help," he called out. "We will not hurt you." The alien creatures looked at him. Their eyes were very smart and very afraid. They did not understand his words, but they understood his actions. They understood that these humans were not attacking them. One creature swam toward the boat. It was bleeding. Its shoulder was torn open. Lisa was already moving, reaching out her hand. In that moment, Nathan knew something had changed. Forever. Humanity had just met the wider universe. And they had chosen to show the universe what humans were really made of. Mercy. Courage. The will to help even when it was dangerous. The creature took Lisa's hand and let her pull it from the water. And as more creatures were rescued and brought back to the station, the universe was watching. The universe was seeing humans for the first time in their true light, and everything was about to change. Commander Zex of the Zarelian Empire stood in the medical bay and stared at the human female, who was wrapping bandages around his arm. His mind was still trying to understand what had happened. His ship was destroyed. His fleet was lost. His people were dead. And these strange creatures, these primitive humans, were saving his life. He had lived for 214 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had fought in 3 galactic wars. He had negotiated treaties between species that had hated each other for 1,000 years. He had done impossible things, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans did not ask questions about weapons or resources or power. They did not ask what the Zarelians could offer them in return. They simply helped. They brought dry clothes. They gave food. They provided medical treatment without demanding anything at all. Dr. Lisa Grant was the name of the human female. She had studied the Zarelian body for hours and adapted her medical care to match their alien biology. She had injected medicines into their bloodstream. She had treated burns and cuts and bruises. She had done this work knowing absolutely nothing about Zarelian physiology. She had simply figured it out through observation and logic. "You will be fine," she said to Zex. her words coming through a translation device that the station's scientists had created overnight. Your wound is deep, but you are strong. You will heal. Zex wanted to ask her why. Why would she risk her own life to save a creature she had never seen before? Why would her captain allow it? What did the Zerelians have that these humans could possibly want? He would get answers much faster than he expected. The Galactic Council arrived on massive ships that blotted out the sun. These were not ships designed for exploration or trade. These were ships designed to show power and demand obedience. Nathan Hayes stood in the control room and watched the screens fill with images of the Council's fleet. There were 100 ships, maybe more. They filled the sky above the station like a metal ceiling. They are demanding that we surrender immediately, Rachel said, her voice shaking. They are saying that human contact with the Zerelians is forbidden. They are saying that we have broken the laws of the galaxy. Tell them we do not accept their demands, Nathan said calmly. Captain, there are over 1,000 soldiers on those ships, Tom said. We cannot fight them. Then we will not fight them, Nathan said. But we will also not abandon the Zerelians. Tell them that the Zerelians are under the protection of this station and under the protection of the human race. The message was sent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Council's primary ship sent a response. An old being appeared on the screen. His face was covered in lines and marks from centuries of life. His eyes were cold and empty. His name was Chancellor Varric, and he had ruled the Galactic Council for the last 100 years. Humans, he said, and his voice was like ice. We did not know you existed until this moment. We have studied your planet. We have seen your history. You are primitives. You have not even left your own solar system until today. You kill each other for resources. You wage wars over ideas. You are chaos and violence wrapped in flesh. Nathan listened to this, and he felt anger rise up inside him. But he controlled it. He spoke calmly. We have left our planet. We are standing here, talking to you. We are helping people in need, just as any species should do. If that makes us primitive, then perhaps being primitive is better than being cold. Perhaps being primitive is better than leaving others to die. The Chancellor's expression did not change. The Zerelians brought this upon themselves. Their empire is weak. Their decision-making is flawed. The Void Swarm is a force of nature. It cannot be stopped. 17 other civilizations have already been destroyed by it. We are choosing not to waste resources fighting something that cannot be defeated. We are sealing off this region of space. Everyone here will be left to die. That is the decision of the Council. He closed the communication. The message was complete. The Council was not interested in helping. They were not interested in fighting. They were only interested in protecting their own power and influence. For 3 hours, nothing happened. The Council's ship stayed in orbit. The station staff waited. Zex and the other Zerelians in the medical bay waited. Time moved slowly. Then Rachel's voice came through the intercoms, tight with tension. Captain, the Void Swarm is here. It is at the edge of the solar system. It is moving toward us. Nathan left the control room and went down to the medical bay. Zex was standing at the window, looking out at the sky. The Zerelian commander was tall and strong, but Nathan could see the fear in his eyes. I am sorry, Zex said. My people have brought death to your world. No, Nathan said. Death brought itself, but we will not accept it. Tell me about the swarm. Tell me what we are facing. Zex turned to look at him. You cannot fight it. No one can. I have seen 17 civilizations try to stop the swarm. 17 civilizations are now gone. Billions of lives. Billions. Gone. Then we will be the first to stop it, Nathan said. Or we will die trying. But we will not stop trying because the Council told us it was impossible. We will not stop trying because the threat was too great. That is not what humans do. We fight. We adapt. We find new ways when old ways fail. Nathan went back to the control room and called Kevin and Lisa and Tom together. I want to know everything, he said. I want to know how the swarm kills. I want to know how it moves. I want to know how it thinks. I want to know everything about how it works. Because if we are going to stop it, we need to understand it. And humans are very good at understanding things. We are good at learning. We are good at finding solutions to problems that seem impossible. Kevin nodded and began talking about the data the Xerelians had provided. Lisa discussed what Zex had told her about swarm victims. Tom talked about weapons and defenses, and as they talked, Nathan looked out at the sky. Somewhere in that darkness, the void swarm was coming toward them. Something that had destroyed civilizations. Something that had killed billions. For the first time in 2,000 years of recorded history, the Galactic Council had made a mistake. They had abandoned the Xerelians, and they had underestimated the humans. That mistake was about to cost them everything. The void swarm filled the screens like a living nightmare. It was not a ship or a weapon. It was something else entirely. It was a cloud of dark matter and moving shadow that consumed everything in its path. Where it moved, asteroids simply vanished. Where it touched the edges of Xerelian stations, the stations broke apart like glass and disappeared into nothing. Dr. Kevin Martinez sat at his computer terminal, working through the night without sleep. Around him, the entire station was a hive of activity. Scientists and engineers worked on problems they had never seen before, trying to understand an enemy that seemed to have no rules and no weakness. The swarm does not use conventional weapons, Kevin said to the group gathered in the control room. It does not shoot or fire anything. Instead, it seems to dissolve matter at the molecular level. Anything it touches ceases to exist. We have analyzed the residue from destroyed ships. There is nothing left. Not atoms. Not energy. Just blank space where things used to be. So conventional weapons are useless, Tom said flatly. Not just useless. Worse than useless. Any weapon we fire at it seems to make it stronger. It consumes the energy and grows larger, Kevin said. Nathan listened to this information and felt the weight of impossible odds. But he did not panic. He did not give up. Instead, he asked a question that would change everything. How does it communicate? The Xerelians said that the swarm has some kind of intelligence. It hunts. It thinks. So how does it share information with itself? Kevin looked at the screens of data. His eyes moved across numbers and patterns. Suddenly, his hand froze. Frequencies, he said slowly. Look at the pattern. The swarm is using biological frequencies. Not radio waves. Not energy pulses. Actual living signals. The swarm is made of living organisms. Millions of them. Billions. Maybe trillions. They coordinate through biological chemical signals. That is how they function as one. Each organism sends signals to its neighbors. The signals spread through the swarm like thoughts through a brain. Tom looked confused. That does not help us. We cannot fight billions of organisms. No, Kevin said. His voice was getting excited now. But we can disrupt them. If we can create a signal that matches their frequency, we can create chaos inside the swarm. We can break their coordination. We can turn them against each other. Nathan stood up. Can we create that signal? I do not know, Kevin said. But I know someone who might be able to help. We need Commander Zex. He understands how Xerelian biology works. He understands how to create biological signals. If anyone can help us, it is him. Commander Zex was brought to the laboratory. He listened to the human scientists explain their theory. His face was hard to read. Xerelians had not evolved facial expressions the way humans had. But Nathan could see the change in his posture. There was hope in the way he stood. "It is possible," Zek said finally. "In theory, it is possible. We would need a biological matrix that could generate the right frequency. We would need someone to take that matrix directly into the swarm and activate it. The person would be exposed to the swarm directly. The odds of survival are almost zero. Who would volunteer?" Lisa asked quietly. There was silence. Everyone in the room knew what the question meant. It was asking who would walk into hell and hope to walk back out. A young man stepped forward. His name was Marcus Webb, and he was a soldier who had been stationed at the Pacific Research Station as part of Earth's new commitment to space exploration. He was 24 years old and had never seen combat. "I will do it," Marcus said. "Tell me what I need to do." For the next 72 hours, Marcus worked with Kevin and Zex to prepare for the mission. They created a device that was part human technology and part Xerelian biological engineering. It was a matrix that could generate the frequency that would disrupt the swarm. Marcus would carry it directly into the edge of the swarm. Lisa spent time with him, making sure his body could handle the stress. Tom worked on a suit that would protect him as much as possible. Rachel prepared the communication system so they could stay in contact with him. And Nathan sat with Marcus on the night before the mission. "You do not have to do this," Nathan said. Double quotes, "Yes." "I do," Marcus said simply. "You chose to save the Xerelians when the rest of the galaxy wanted to let them die. You chose to fight when everyone said it was impossible. I am following your lead." The Void Swarm was now less than 3 million kilometers away. The Council ships had left. They wanted no part of what was about to happen. A small spacecraft carried Marcus out toward the swarm. He was alone in the pilot's seat, with the device on his lap. Through the view screen, he could see the edge of the swarm. It looked like a darkness that was not just the absence of light. It was the absence of everything. The absence of existence itself. "I am in range," Marcus reported. "Activating the device now." The device began to glow. The biological matrix inside it was working, generating the frequency that should disrupt the swarm. Marcus moved the small ship into the edge of the swarm cloud. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the swarm changed. The darkness began to move differently. The smooth, coordinated motion became chaotic. Sections of the swarm began to move against other sections. The unified organism was beginning to tear itself apart. "It is working," Marcus said, his voice tight with amazement. "It is actually working. The swarm is fragmenting. They are destroying each other." But then something happened that they had not expected. The swarm responded. It turned toward Marcus and his small ship. It reached for him like fingers closing around prey. "Get out!" Nathan's voice came through the radio. "Get out of there now." Marcus pushed the controls hard, but the ship was too slow. The swarm was too fast. It wrapped around the small spacecraft like darkness swallowing light. Inside the station, everyone watched the screens go blank. The ship's signal stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the screens flickered back to life. Marcus's face appeared on the video feed. He was alive. "I am still here," he said, and his voice was steady. "The device is still generating the signal. The swarm is falling apart. I can feel it. Something is breaking. Something is wrong in their coordination. I think it is working." Across the solar system, the Void Swarm was tearing itself to pieces. The billions of organisms that made it up were no longer communicating. They were no longer coordinated. They were chaos. They were destruction turning inward. For the first time, someone had stopped the swarm, and they had done it by understanding that strength came not from weapons or power, but from the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to never give up. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were truly made of. The battle was not like the wars humans knew about. There were no trenches. There were no front lines where soldiers stood and fought. Instead, the battle was spread across 3 solar systems. Ships from the Zarelian Empire, ships from 14 different alien species, and ships from the human navy all moved together against the fragments of the Void Swarm. Marcus Webb remained in the center of the swarm, his device still generating the disruption frequency. The small spacecraft had been damaged by the darkness, and he was running low on power. But he did not give up. He pushed deeper into the fragmented cloud, making sure the frequency reached everywhere. Making sure the swarm continued to fall apart, Nathan Hayes commanded the human fleet from the main control station. Around him, monitors showed the positions of hundreds of ships. He was not a military commander in the traditional sense. He had been given command because he was the one who had started this unlikely alliance. Because the other species believed in him. Because humans had proven they could think in ways that others could not. "All units, stay alert," Nathan said into the communication system. "Watch for fragmentation of the swarm. When sections break off, they become more dangerous. They fight harder. Do not let them escape the perimeter." The ships of allied species moved into position. Fighters from human ships engaged the pieces of the swarm. The Zarelians worked in coordination with species they had fought wars against for centuries. An insectoid race called the Krell fought beside aquatic beings from the ice moons. The galaxy, for the first time in recorded history, was united in common cause, but unity was not easy. Different species fought in different ways. What was strategy to one species was madness to another. Communication delays meant that sometimes ships fired in directions that endangered allies. Sometimes different commanders disagreed about tactics. Nathan saw these problems developing. He assembled commanders from 5 different species and did something that shocked them all. He told them the truth about what he did not know. "I am not a military commander," he said. "I am a scientist and an administrator. I do not know the best tactics for this kind of battle, but I know that each of you understands your own people. I know that each of you is smart and experienced. So I am asking you to help me. We need to coordinate, but not because one of us is in charge. We need to coordinate because we all want the same thing. We all want to survive." The Zarelian commander, a female named Karev, spoke first. "In my experience, when different forces coordinate, we need to understand each other's communication patterns. We need to predict how the other will act." "Exactly," Nathan said. "So let us share information. Let us understand how each species thinks. Let us use our differences as strength instead of weakness." For 8 hours, the Allied commanders worked together. They developed a system where each species operated with some independence, but all operations were coordinated through Nathan's command station. It was messy. It was complicated. It was not efficient by any logical measure, but it worked because humans brought something to the table that the other species had not considered. Humans could improvise. They could adapt on the fly. When a plan did not work, they did not freeze in confusion. They created new plans immediately. The turning point came when a massive section of the swarm broke through the Allied perimeter. It was heading directly toward a station where 5,000 Zarelian refugees had taken shelter. If that section reached the station, everyone on it would die. There was no time to organize a proper defense. There was no time for careful planning. Jennifer Cooper, a human fighter pilot, saw the threat and acted. She was a woman who had grown up on Earth, learning to survive in harsh environments. She had studied the movements of the swarm for days. She understood, in a way that no alien species could, that sometimes the only solution was to do something that seemed completely crazy. She flew her fighter directly at the swarm section. She moved in patterns that no computer would calculate as efficient. She moved in curves and spirals that seemed random. But they worked. They confused the swarm. They broke its forward movement. Then she led it away from the station. She flew through the densest part of the swarm cloud, taking damage to her ship with every second, but keeping the threat away from the refugees. Behind her, other human fighters followed, supporting her, protecting her, buying time for the defense systems to power up. Jennifer's ship was hit 3 times. 4 times. The damage was catastrophic. But she did not stop flying. She did not stop fighting. She kept moving, kept leading the swarm away, kept buying time. Finally, with her engines nearly dead and her hull breached, Jennifer managed to fly her damaged ship into the densest part of the swarm section. She ejected from the cockpit just as the ship exploded, and the explosion drove a wedge through the swarm fragments. Rescue ships picked her up from the vacuum. She was alive. She had survived. The Zarelian commander Karev watched this happen on the monitors. She saw a human risk everything for creatures she had only met days before. The Zarelian species had been around for millions of years. They had conquered civilizations. They had built empires. But they had never seen courage like this. They had never seen a species willing to throw everything into battle for those they barely knew. In the center of the swarm, Marcus Webb was still alive. The signal was still working. The swarm was still fragmenting. But the fragments were becoming more desperate, more dangerous. They were attacking harder, fighting more aggressively, trying to overwhelm the Allied defenses before they could be completely destroyed. Nathan made the call that would determine everything. All units, fall back to secondary positions. Leave a corridor open. Let the remaining swarm fragments move toward the corridor. The commanders looked at his orders with confusion. Was he telling them to retreat? Was he giving up? Trust me, Nathan said simply. The Allied forces began to pull back. The remaining swarm fragments, sensing an escape route, began to move toward the corridor. They were still fighting, still dangerous, but they were moving in a direction. They were becoming focused in the center of the swarm. Marcus understood what Nathan was doing. He increased the frequency. He pushed the device to its maximum capacity. The swarm fragments, now concentrated and focused, began to tear themselves apart. The increased signal frequency was destroying their ability to coordinate. They fragmented into smaller pieces. Smaller pieces. Smaller still. Until finally, the void swarm was nothing but scattered atoms and disconnected organisms that could not function alone. The swarm was dead. The threat was finished, but the victory had cost lives. Human pilots who had flown into impossible odds did not come home. Zarelian soldiers who had believed in the Alliance fell defending it. Warriors from a dozen alien species made sacrifices so that others could live. Nathan stood in the control room and looked at the screen showing the aftermath. The swarm was gone, but the cost of victory was written in every loss, every death. Every life changed forever. He thought about Jennifer Cooper, who had volunteered for a mission that should have killed her. He thought about Marcus Webb, still floating in the damaged spacecraft at the edge of a dead swarm. He thought about all the others who had chosen to fight because it was right, not because they were told to. All ships. Begin recovery operations, Nathan said into the communicator. Bring everyone home. The battle was over, but the real change was just beginning. The Galactic Council held its last official meeting on a neutral station orbiting a dead star. Chancellor Vorik sat in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the ancient beings who had ruled known space for the last 1,000 years. They had come to understand that their time had ended. Nathan Hayes was invited to speak. He stood in the chamber, not because he was a ruler or a conqueror, but because the galaxy wanted to hear from the voice that had changed everything. The Void Swarm was a test, Nathan said simply. Not a test we wanted to take, but a test nonetheless. We failed or we succeeded based on what we learned about ourselves. The Galactic Council made a choice to abandon the Xerelians. You chose logic over compassion. You chose calculation over courage. And you were wrong. The Chancellor did not argue. He simply nodded, acknowledging the truth. We are dissolving the Council, he said. Our authority is gone. The galaxy does not need old beings deciding what is right and wrong. The galaxy needs beings who understand that strength comes from values, not from power. Your species understands this. Humanity understands this. Within weeks, a new structure was formed. It was not a government. It was not a council. It was an alliance of free species, each keeping their independence, but choosing to work together for mutual benefit. The first law of this alliance was simple. No being would be abandoned. In their time of need, Nathan refused any formal position in the new alliance. Instead, he returned to the Pacific Research Station, which was now transformed into something much larger. It had become the center of human contact with the galaxy. It had become the place where species learned about humanity, and where humans learned about the stars. Dr. Lisa Grant opened the first medical research center dedicated to cross-species healing. She worked with alien physicians and human doctors to cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millions of years. A Xerelian disease that had slowly destroyed their nervous system was cured. A genetic flaw in the insectoid Krell population was corrected. Treatments for conditions that had always been considered terminal were suddenly possible. The work was hard and complicated. Different species had different biology. What was medicine for one species could be poison for another. But Lisa brought to the work the same compassion that Nathan had shown when he first rescued the Xerelians from the ocean. She treated every species as worthy of her best effort. Kevin Martinez built a research facility dedicated to understanding the Void Swarm. Scientists from 24 species worked together to study the fragments that remained, to understand why it had emerged, and to ensure that nothing like it could ever happen again. Kevin discovered that the swarm was not evil or intelligent in the way humans understood intelligence. It was a natural force, like a hurricane or an earthquake. Understanding it meant learning to coexist with it, not to destroy it. Tom Parker trained the first joint engineering teams of humans and aliens. He taught them that any problem could be solved if you understood the basic principles of how things worked. He brought together engineers from species that had never communicated before and showed them that the language of machinery was universal. Buildings were constructed that combined human creativity with alien technology, creating structures that were beautiful and functional in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. Commander Zex became the ambassador between humanity and the Xerelian Empire. He spent his time learning human values and human culture. He was fascinated by human emotion, by the way humans could love and care and sacrifice without calculating advantage. He brought these values back to the Xerelians, helping his people understand that there were things more valuable than power and survival. But the person whose life changed the most was Marcus Webb. When they rescued him from the edge of the dead swarm, they found him changed. He had been exposed to the disruption frequency while in the middle of alien organisms. The exposure had done something to his neural pathways, something that could not be explained by standard medicine. He could still think clearly, but he could sense patterns in ways that normal humans could not. He could predict behavior in ways that seemed like magic. Marcus could have taken this gift and used it to gain power or wealth. Instead, he became a teacher. He traveled to human military academies and taught soldiers about fighting in ways they had never imagined. He taught them that the strongest warrior was not the one with the best weapons. The strongest warrior was the one who understood that they were fighting to protect others, not to gain glory. He taught them that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was moving forward even when you were afraid. Marcus also traveled with human diplomatic teams. When humans met with alien species for the first time, Marcus was often there. He helped them understand each other. He showed them how to see past the strangeness of appearance and behavior to find the common ground that existed between all intelligent beings. Years passed. The Pacific Research Station grew into a city. The first human colonies on Mars were established, and then on moons around Jupiter. Humans left Earth in greater and greater numbers, not to conquer, but to explore and to cooperate with their new allies. The galaxy changed. It was not a sudden transformation. It was slow and careful. But gradually, species that had fought each other for centuries began to work together. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges happened. Young beings from different species studied together, grew friendships that crossed the boundaries of biology. On a clear night, Nathan Hayes stood on the beach near the Pacific Research Station. He was older now, his dark hair completely gray, but his eyes still held the same steady intelligence and compassion that they had always held. Beside him stood Commander Zex. The Zarellian had developed a friendship with Nathan that went beyond politics and diplomacy. They had become true friends. They understood each other. "Did you know this would happen?" Zex asked, looking up at the stars. "No," Nathan said honestly. "I did not know anything would come of that first decision to help your people. I just knew that we could not turn away from those who needed help." "The Galactic Council would have watched us die and felt nothing," Zex said. "They were afraid," Nathan said. "Fear makes species do terrible things. When you are afraid, you stop thinking about compassion. You stop thinking about justice. You think only about survival. And humans did not feel fear?" Zex asked. "We felt terror," Nathan said. "We felt the weight of impossible odds. But we also felt something stronger. We felt a responsibility to each other. We felt that our lives meant something only if we used them for others. I do not know if that is wisdom or foolishness, but it is what we are." They stood in silence for a long time, watching the stars. Somewhere out in those stars, humans were being born on new worlds. They were building cities and farms. They were raising families. They were creating new cultures that blended human values with the knowledge of alien species. And somewhere, young humans were training to be soldiers and diplomats and scientists and artists. They were being taught that their strength lay not in weapons, but in their willingness to understand others. They were being taught that the greatest victory was not conquest, but cooperation. The Void Swarm had been a test. Humanity had not passed the test by being stronger or smarter or more advanced. Humanity had passed the test by being something else entirely, by being willing to sacrifice, by being willing to risk everything for others, by understanding that strength and intelligence meant nothing without compassion and courage. Fear had found humanity first. The terror of the unknown, the danger of the Void Swarm, the weight of a galaxy that wanted them to fail. But humanity had met that fear and transformed it into something beautiful. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the true measure of strength was not in weapons or power or technology. It was in the will to stand beside others when they needed you. It was in the choice to help, even when helping was dangerous. Nathan felt a presence beside him and turned to see Lisa, her face lined with age but still carrying that same compassion in her eyes. Tom was there too, and Rachel, and all the others who had made the impossible choice to help instead of to abandon. Behind them, on the screens of the station, the stars blazed with light and life and possibility. Humanity was no longer alone, and the galaxy would never be the same. The terror had found them first, but humanity had answered with courage and compassion. And in doing so, they had saved not just their own species, but the entire galaxy. That was the true power of humanity. Not weapons, not knowledge, but the unshakable belief that every life mattered. And that together, anything was possible.